Copy: there are two reasons why Lin Zhu joined the Monster Investigation Bureau. 1. Go down the mountain to find the answer to the sleeping family. 2. Make money to support oneself. On the first day of work, Lin Zhu was painted by the director and forced to work overtime. So this colleague who worked overtime with her, like a snowy peak, was also troubled by mundane things and voluntarily fell into the mortal world. TSK, Lin Zhu secretly licked his tongue. Colleague. I'm not short of money. Lin Zhu humbly asked, may I ask why you are working? Colleague. Idle. Lin Zhu smiled and said, excuse me. After working for N days, Lin Zhu learned a small piece of news. I heard that the new Tian Dao is working part-time in our bureau. Lin Zhu complained to his colleagues who have already got along very well. I'm joking. How can Tian Dao, who is always busy, have time to do part-time jobs? My colleague replied, it should be idle. Lin Zhu laughed and said, you guys are really idle. Qianshu glanced at her and replied lightly, it's my leisure. Lin Zhu. 1v1, Lin Zhu x Qianshu, relaxed slow hot air, keywords of the novel. I work at the Monster Investigation Bureau and fish without pop-ups. I work at the Monster Investigation Bureau and fish without pop-ups. Download the full text of the novel. I work at the Monster Investigation Bureau and fish with the latest chapters to read. Chapter 1. Related households equal to laborers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Related households equal to laborers. In the scorching summer of July, the red sun is now hanging on the sky dyed with a faint rose color. Even though the sunlight is no longer dazzling, it still emits a scorching temperature. This is the endless suburban area of the capital with only loess and dust, as well as an asphalt road that has been scorched by the scorching afternoon sun and is still steaming hot. Beijing Highway 11. A van with a roaring engine rushed towards the end of the empty straight road, unable to distinguish its color. When it stopped, the sound of the engine came to a sudden halt. Here we are, the previously agreed upon 500. The driver spoke in a Beijing accent, holding an unlit cigarette and wiping the sweat off his forehead. After squinting his eyes and looking around for 4 weeks, he quickly regained his curiosity. No matter what this girl is doing here, just make money. Car enthusiasts say it's very strange here, and no one wants to come to this damn place except for him. Okay, thank you, the girl said sincerely. WeChat or Alipay? The driver took out a card with a QR code printed on the front and back. Cash. The girl handed out a handful of 500 yuan consisting of loose money. The driver looked at her suspiciously, but didn't say anything. In the blink of an eye, the figure of this van disappeared onto Highway 11, leaving behind a wind of dust and heat waves. Lin Zhu held his breath and calmly tucked his messy hair against his cheek behind his ear, revealing the earrings hidden between his hair. The cloth hanging under her ears was as thin as cicada wings, and the pattern on it was a floating cloud of buildings outlined in gold powder, with a dark gray tassel hanging at the end. The patterns drawn with a few strokes on the thin film are shining brightly in the light. After the smoke and dust dissipated, Lin Zhu lifted his head and glanced at the road sign with the words, Animal Encounter. He took out a yellow talisman from the shoulder bag with a squirrel pendant and slapped it on his arm. When the skin comes into contact with thin paper, the sticky heat instantly separates from the skin. Without any hesitation, she dragged her suitcase and stepped into this desolate land. I don't know how long I've been walking, but on this completely dusty land, a mirage-like building caught Lin Zhu's eye. With exquisite large fences, a super-large courtyard, and a 3-story villa. As if sensing her presence, the door automatically opened and I stepped into the courtyard. The murky breath and summer heat all disappeared, and between my breaths was clear and clean air. Lin Zhu casually pulled off the thin paper, kneaded it into a ball, and put it back in his bag. At the same time, the image of the villa shattered like glass, turning into countless dots of light and disappearing. Instead, it was a retro villa wrapped in a multi-dot layer array, exuding an extraordinary and magnificent atmosphere. Lin Zhu raised her eyebrows. It was also her first time here. This Western-style house is exactly where the Special Event Management Investigation Bureau will work in the future. Lin Zhu passed the Special Job Recruitment Assessment conducted by the Investigation Bureau every 20 years last year, but due to personal reasons, he has been delayed in joining. Due to her family member Bai Xing suddenly falling into a deep sleep 7 days ago, Lin Zhu tried various methods but was unsuccessful. She arranged Bai Xing's body in the small courtyard in the mountains properly, and coincidentally received another onboarding reminder from the Investigation Bureau, so she took the opportunity to leave the mountain. Lin Zhu stood in front of the Western-style house and couldn't help feeling nervous. She patted her shoulder bag, which contained the work guide for newcomers in the workplace, that she had recently found in a small bookstore on the roadside. Although she doesn't quite agree with some aspects, it can still be considered a solution to the urgent situation. Lin Zhu quickly calmed down and muttered, "No problem. It's just that he was in the previous class, so there's nothing to be nervous about." Thinking of this, she pushed the door in without hesitation. Passing through the luxurious retro and formal layout of the spacious hall, Lin Zhu ignored the curious gaze of her staff and effortlessly climbed the side steps of the hall to the second floor, carrying her suitcase. She directly knocked on the door with the "Director's Office" sign hanging in the middle. The door quietly opens, and the exterior is decorated with a Republican style, while the interior is decorated with a rather ancient style. Behind the exquisite glazed wooden platform sat a middle-aged man in a white uniform. Behind him was a whole painting of ink and wash mountains, while the rest of the wall space was occupied by bookshelves and meticulous paintings. A head of dry white short hair, with a friendly face, the antique-style room was somewhat out of place with his hairstyle, but due to his unique style and fusion, this was Wan Shichen, the director of the Bureau of Investigation headquarters. Wan Shichen shook the folding fan painted with daishan and green water, and when he saw the visitor, he raised his white eyebrows and said, "Oh, isn't this wood? I thought you, as a big person, had lost it. Uncle Wan, long time no see." Seeing the familiar elders, Lin Zhu relaxed his tense body and closed the door with a casual smile. I didn't lose it. It's just that my phone broke down before going down the mountain." "That's quite a coincidence." Wan Shichen gestured for her to sit down and personally poured tea, jokingly saying, "Last year, the staff who contacted you told me that you would come, and I thought he was deceiving the leader to meet the target. So what wind blew you down the mountain?" Lin Zhu sat down generously, ignoring the teasing in his words, and replied expressionlessly, "The northwest wind that cannot be drunk." The middle-aged man with a smile on his face in front of him knew the reason and loved to play tricks on her. "Don't take it too seriously with your elders. Oh, how about something to drink?" He pushed a cup of tea in front of her. "Your aunt and I sent you to work last year. Who made you fuss about it?" Lin Zhu didn't dare to answer, picked up the porcelain cup in his hand, saw that the temperature was not high, drank it all in one gulp, and then frowned and pushed the cup aside. Seeing that the greetings were about the same, Wan Shichen took out the contract from the nearby shelf and handed it to her, urging, "Just right, you can take a look at the contract again and sign it if there are no problems." Lin Zhu took the contract with both hands and quickly glanced at it, which was similar in content to last year. Her position is as AS.level Special Investigator in the Special Investigation Department of the Special Event Management Bureau. Special investigators will be divided into S, A, B, C, D, and E levels based on the assessment level, and will solve corresponding non-human events according to task requirements. Lin Zhu picked up his pen and pondered for 2 seconds before suddenly speaking, "The base salary is 6,000, with additional commission. He works from 9 to 6 in the morning, with 5 insurances and 1 fund. He arranges his own meals and accommodations on 8 days off each month, and earns double pay at the end of the year. After memorizing these benefits, Lin Zhu stared at the middle-aged man closely, trying to confirm, "Uncle Wan, these are all true, right? Although these terms are clearly stated in the contract. However, the manual suggests that newly hired employees will have their treatment confirmed with their boss again, which Lin Zhu believes is necessary." Wan Shichen shook the folding fan and said with a smile, "Of course it's true." Oh, Lin Zhu carefully examined his expression and did not find any abnormalities. Since that's the case, all other documents were submitted last year, and she neatly signed and stamped the red seal on 2 contracts, officially becoming a member here. At the moment when Lin Zhu signed his name, a feeling of dust settling still rose in his heart. Wan Shichen collected a contract and spoke leisurely, "Wooden wood." Lin Zhu's eyebrows twitched, and before he could interrupt, he took out a document as if he was already prepared. He smiled and said, "While you haven't finished work yet, you're also idle now. There's a tricky and urgent task, so hurry up and do it. Danger. For newcomers to the workplace, this is an excellent opportunity to brush their face in front of the boss. But this is also her cheap uncle. Joking, she has been dusty for several days waiting for today's rest. She just hasn't worked before, so she's not stupid." Lin Zhu chuckled foolishly twice and skillfully responded, "Okay, I'll take a look at the content first and go tomorrow morning." After finishing speaking, she took the document and stood up. "Goodbye Uncle Wan, I'll go to the dormitory first." "Xiao Lin." Wan Shichen restrained his smile and lightly patted the folding fan on the table. Lin Zhu sat down involuntarily, only to hear him sternly say, "This needs to be done today, it's very urgent." This outrageous title made Lin Zhu's mouth twitch. Do we have to wait for her to come and do this urgent matter? I can only rest assured if I leave it to you. You have strong abilities and will definitely be able to finish it today. What a terrible social person, she started to put pressure on her. "Xiao Lin, don't bother anymore. It's 5:30 now, hurry up, maybe you can come back and have a late-night snack in the cafeteria," Wan Shichen said firmly, giving her no room to struggle. Exam. If she remembers correctly, the midnight break in the bureau is from 11 p.m. to 12:30 p.m. I thought she was a related person, but to my surprise, she turned into a laborer. What is she so nervous about? Uncle Wan, Lin Zhu smiled and stared at him with a pair of resentful almond eyes, sweetly saying, "Are we a legitimate unit? Can she file a complaint?" "Nonsense, read less messy books." Wan Shichen suddenly slapped her head with a folding fan. Lin Zhu touched his head and continued to mourn, "I want to rest. Urgent tasks come with additional subsidies." "Okay, Wan Zhu. I'll just look at the information now. Money doesn't make money, you bastard. Update 4000 every day. I hope everyone can embark on a new journey with me. This is a story that has been conceived for a long time. Everything you want to see will be there. Please give me a chance. May frequently revise articles. Don't worry, everyone. My own OCD. It won't affect the plot and reading." End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Just joined the company and wanted to resign. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Just joined the company and wanted to resign. Focus on the materials. Report on the incident at number 2234, District 9, Beijing. Task number 2234. Case attribute. Injury and imprisonment incidents caused by the ghost tribe. Lin Zhu carefully selected the paper marked with key points to review, quickly flipped through it, and after keeping all the relevant information in mind, he collected the materials. She deliberately stood up with a mournful expression, trying to struggle, and said, "Did I really go? Uncle Cheap wouldn't really become a cunning boss, would he? In fact, the special investigator has task targets every month, but they are not included in the base salary, so there will be additional money to complete the tasks, which is the commission in the contract." Lin Zhu just doesn't want to start working overtime from the first day on the job. If you start and taste the benefits, you may enjoy it as much as you like in the future. Go ahead, I'll keep an eye on you. Wan Shichen smiled calmly and even advised thoughtfully, oh, by the way, pack your luggage and change into your uniform before going. Everything is in your room. Lin Zhu nodded heartily, feeling that this thoughtfulness was not enough. She grabbed the doorknob again and was about to leave when another sound came in her ear. Hey, wait, don't leave yet. I forgot there's one more thing I haven't said. Lin Zhu forced out a smile and said, Wanju, what do you say? Wan Shichen shook his fan and said lightly, Mumu, do you know the recorder? I know, what's wrong? Each special investigator will bind a video recorder as a partner. The recorder will use special equipment to record the entire process of the task, firstly to supervise whether there are any violations during the execution of the task by the special coordinator. Secondly, it is also convenient for financial reporting. If the target monster of the mission damages houses, land, etc. in the present world, there will also be evidence to claim reimbursement from that monster in the future. Wan Shichen said meaningfully, it's okay. Remember to confirm in advance whether the recorder is in place and wait until they arrive before starting the task. Otherwise, it won't comply with the regulations. Lin Zhu didn't think about it carefully, but she smelled a hint of something unusual from the familiar tone. She, and waited for a moment, only to see that he had finally finished speaking. She quickly slipped away. Creak. Bang. This is the sound of Lin Zhu opening and closing the door. This girl. Wan Shichen shook her head as she fled in a hurry, her words carrying the indulgence of her elders. He put down the folding fan and tapped his fingers on the table. In the middle of the glazed wooden platform, there was a surge of gray mist, from which he extended a hand that had condensed into dust. Gray handed the teapot, filling it with empty cups and disappearing. Wan Shichen held a porcelain cup, a faint fragrance lingering in his nose. Through the thick layer of white smoke, he squinted his eyes and murmured to himself, it seems it's time, dear friend. If it weren't for that, why did you deliberately force Mumu to the foot of the mountain? However, it's also a good thing. He picked up the box and sent a message to someone, and the smile on his lips grew stronger. In the afternoon, the rose colors in the sky only became a bit stronger. Not far from the Western-style house, there was an exaggerated 6-story and a half-circular tall building. Looking around, colorful lanterns hung under the eaves of the tall building. Lin Zhu, dragging his luggage, walked along the side corridor and once again met the curious gaze of several staff members as he passed through the courtyard park where the staff were resting. At the bottom of the dormitory, Lin Zhu looked up and saw a lantern hanging next to each door, either of different colors or with exquisite patterns. Several colorful small lights light up together, creating a unique flavor in the afterglow of the dusk. Her room is on the 3rd floor. On the left is a silk lantern painted with a few drops of ink, while on the right it is temporarily empty, indicating that no one is occupied. Lin Zhu couldn't help but curl his lips and developed a strong interest in the neighbor he had never met before. After lighting the lantern with spiritual energy, Lin Zhu opened the door and looked around the single room. The walls were light yellow, the furniture was complete, and the style was simple and cute. In the middle of the brand new soft bed are uniforms and documents, as well as a square box containing a black mobile phone. Although it looks no different from a regular phone in appearance, this is an exclusive device of the Bureau of Investigation, called a box, and each employee will be equipped with one for free. There are only 4 apps on the box, namely Taskbar, Box Chat, Forum, and Map. Not very functional, but fully capable of meeting the needs of work and daily communication. The detailed information of each task can be viewed in real time in the taskbar of the box, so there is no need to carry information with you. Putting on his uniform, Lin Zhu felt a gentle chill. It seems that there are not only hidden formations in the bureau, but even the uniforms of the staff are a safety net. The key of Lin Zhu is that with it, there is no need to draw cooling symbols in summer. If you can save before receiving your salary. She smiled and walked to the room to tidy up in front of the full-body mirror. The girl in the mirror is handsome and lovely, with a half-tied ponytail revealing tassel earrings. A white pointed collar shirt is tied around the waist, wrapped in exquisite leather straps, with 2 silver chains and a small waist bag hanging above. Below the waist is a pair of dark patterned black wide pants embroidered with building clouds. White clothes and inked pants, which are the uniform of most staff, and the light gold flat and smooth armband on the right arm is the symbol of S.Level Special Investigators. The originally sweet facial features are further enhanced by this earring and hairstyle, adding a touch of heroism and mystery. Lin Zhu stretched lazily and bounced a few times in place. Great, the uniform doesn't restrict her movements. She put on her work ID and transferred the necessary items to her waist bag. After finishing everything, she reluctantly glanced at the red and blue game console in the suitcase. Fortunately, there haven't been any new games played recently, she muttered to herself. His waist shook, and Lin Zhu took out the box and tugged at the corner of his mouth. Director Wan Shichen. Moo, come on. Director Wan Shichen. Oh, by the way, FYL 5543XXX, this is your telltale aunt's number. Remember to add her. Lin Zhu, S.Level Special Investigator. Okay, Uncle Wan, I'll come back and add you. Director Wan Shichen. Young people, don't be discouraged. We all came here this way. Work hard, you can do it. Lin Zhu, S.Level Special Investigator. Alright, thank you to Wanju for bringing a bowl of chicken soup in the rain. Director Wan Shichen. Automatic reply, it is now the end of work time. I will contact everyone again when I go to work. Lin Zhu. Fuck it. It's not yet 6 o'clock. I want to resign as soon as I start working. An unnamed flame suddenly surged in his heart, and Lin Zhu exhaled his turbid breath, comforting himself that at least he had money to take. Fortunately, she is not the only one working overtime. People are like this, they enjoy gloating and enjoying themselves in adversity. Lin Zhu showed a sly smile and was immediately full of enthusiasm. Let her see who the other unlucky colleague is. Ha, ha. She gave a bitter smile in her heart. I still really want to complain. Wait a moment. The key now is how she should get there. The investigation bureau is located in District 11 of the capital, while the mission location is in District 9 of the capital. Last year, after the assessment ended, she received a document about the investigation bureau. So even if she doesn't join, she still has a preliminary understanding of the layout and unique items here. But there's no workflow written on it. Fortunately, Lin Zhu received a timely message. Jiao Sanchao, later Minister of Foreign Affairs. I have heard a lot about you. Xiaolin, I am Jiao Sanchao, Minister of Logistics and External Affairs. Jiao Sanscan, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Wanju asked me to grant you the permission to teleport formations once. You can now go to the mission location. Lin Zhu, S.Level Special Investigator. Okay. Thank you. Lin Zhu breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, she almost forgot that this was the Special Investigation Bureau, and it was all because Uncle Wan's strong capitalist aura deluded her cognition. Lin Zhu thought, this may be Uncle Wan's only remaining conscience. Hope everyone can click on a bookmark. End of this chapter. What is the reason for your part-time job in Chapter 3? You are listening at novelfull.audio. What is the reason for your part-time job in Chapter 3? There are several empty old houses located in the old district of the capital. Due to government planning, aging houses, and other reasons, even elderly people who want to stay in old houses have moved into high-rise buildings in the city. There are no people here anymore, not even cicadas chirping. Even if the sun sets and the sky is filled with warm colors, there is still a desolate atmosphere shrouded here. The only vibrant thing is the towering ancient wood rooted here, blocking the sky and sun. Suddenly, several glowing runes appeared above the ancient tree, forming a circular ring emitting blue light. At the center of the ring was an empty white color. With the appearance of a figure, the ring shattered and turned into dots of light, disappearing without a trace. Lin Zhu reluctantly touched the trunk of the tree, thinking to herself that teleportation was still effective. In less than 5 minutes, she crossed 2 urban areas. She took out the box to check the map, and the target location was nearby. Lin Zhu stood on the tree stand, hands akimbo, looked left and right, and tentatively asked, "Recorder, are you there? I hope to be a easy-going person, after all, bound partners cannot be changed." There was silence all around, except for the rustling sound of summer winds blowing leaves. Besides wanting to see what kind of person that unfortunate person who shares the same illness looks like, Lin Zhu too has been working for a while, so he wants to ask his colleagues about work-related matters. Moreover, without the recorder, it is impossible to start working. Lin Zhu leaned against the tree with his arms in his arms, looked around again, and his heart turned horizontal. He shouted loudly, "Recorder! Recorder! Are you there, recorder? Recorder! Recorder!" Once she spoke, Lin Zhu felt more and more joyful as she shouted, as if standing on a high mountain venting her dissatisfaction with overtime into a vast valley. As Lin Zhu shouted wildly in a chaotic tone, she instinctively opened her palm and caught a fallen leaf swirling in mid-air. She picked up the leaf and looked at it, about to put it back into the soil. When her gaze focused on the leaf, a blurry figure suddenly appeared behind it. She put down the leaf in her hand and squinted her eyes in uncertainty, asking, "Recorder?" Getting closer, Lin Zhu's expression was shocked. In the moment she saw another unlucky person, an indescribable feeling surged in her heart. It's already dusk, the setting sun is melting gold, and the sky is filled with red clouds. The warm orange light seemed to cover a layer of haziness before my eyes. A few rays of afterglow emerged from the layered gaps in the leaves, and the man with a snowy temperament stepped on the mottled tree shadows towards her. He was dressed in a black and white brocade robe, with a jade crown of half a bundle of green silk, silver forging and a few strands of ink intertwined in his hair, hanging on his shoulder. His face, like a banished fairy, wore a faint smile, and his lacquered eyes looked at her with a hint of helplessness. "It's me, stop shouting." His voice was clear and gentle, like a cold wind wrapped in the scent of an icy spring, effortlessly brushing away the scorching summer heat. "Ah, I'm sorry." Lin Zhu swallowed the almost blurted "wow" and sincerely apologized for his gaffe. Who gave her a moment of spiritual relaxation by summoning colleagues. However, fortunately, I didn't shout "unlucky guy" or "overtime dog" randomly, otherwise I almost died in society. The man was taken aback and replied, "No problem. That's good." She chuckled and calmly averted her gaze. Since the special investigator and recorder were already in place, Lin Zhu jumped off the tree stand and led the way ahead, with the man following closely. Remembering his original intention, Lin Zhu slowed down his pace and walked side by side with him, stealing several glances with his spare light. Although I have seen many people with outstanding appearances in the bureau, none of them can be compared to him. There is a contradictory charm in him, perhaps because his appearance is too young, seemingly a cold person, but also a bit of the nobility and laziness of a nobleman. She coughed lightly and politely said, "Excuse me, is there anything I need to pay attention to later?" "I don't think so. You don't need to care about me, just do what you think." The young man looked straight ahead, with a calm and sincere tone, but this sincerity was slightly diluted by the coldness between his lowered eyebrows. Although he said nonsense, Lin Zhu still let out a surprise, "Oh, actually she didn't expect him to answer." After asking and answering questions, silence descended. It seems that she still has to figure out the workflow herself. With such thoughts in mind, Lin Zhu wisely took the lead and was about to accelerate when he saw the person next to him closely following behind. The distance between the two is always 2 arms apart. She inexplicably understood that he did not reject chatting with her, even waiting for her to bring up the topic. To be reasonable, Lin Zhu is a bit resistant. After all, this colleague may seem gentle, but those eyes hidden by his dark hair are like the deep lake in the mountains and forests at night, which cannot be seen through at a glance. The surface tranquility is just an illusion, unable to see the depth, which makes him afraid. If you enter recklessly without knowing what to do, you may be engulfed by this cold pool. She still wants to live, she can't swim. But this road must not be awkward. They are partners, and in the future, they will have to maintain a friendly relationship. Lin Zhu pondered for a moment. Just as he was about to speak, his mind flashed with the need for a sense of propriety in interacting with colleagues mentioned in the manual, and he immediately hesitated to speak. She scratched her face and asked a painless question. "Are you also working overtime?" "Yeah." She casually said, "Oh, can the recorder not wear a uniform?" "I forgot when I came, sorry." The young man shook his sleeves and his black and white brocade robe turned into white clothes and inked pants in the blink of an eye. The uniforms in the bureau were all adorned with luxury by him. Seeing him change clothes in a second, Lin Zhu's pupils tremble. Fortunately, it didn't go into the water. She was almost blinded by the simple job responsibilities of the recorder. It turned out that there were hidden dragons and tigers in the bureau. She glanced at his ID, which read, Recorder Qian Shu. She secretly took down her name and saw that the atmosphere was about to cool down. Lin Zhu swallowed his saliva and suddenly said, "May I ask if you are doing a part-time job?" Wanju, unscrupulous boss, cannot let such talents waste on positions that can only be seen, unless he is a non-staff member. After a moment of contemplation, Qian Shu glanced at her thoughtfully, seemingly not understanding why she suddenly changed her title. He nodded slightly and said, "Indeed." These 2 words confirmed Lin Zhu's conjecture. She was greatly shocked and suddenly looked up, blurting out, "So we are the same." The previous respect was only maintained in 1 word. This time, her tone was noticeably more friendly than before, and the 4 words, "we are the same," seemed to bring us closer together. Why go to work if you don't lack money? Naturally, I only go to work when I am short of money. If you still lack money after work, you naturally have to take on a part-time job. This is a meticulous logic. Lin Zhu didn't expect that this character, who looked like a peak in cold snow, would also be troubled by mundane things and voluntarily fall into the mortal world. She secretly licked her tongue. "I'm not lacking." The owner of this voice seemed to see through her brain circuits. Great, he's still staying on the snowy mountain. Lin Zhu's smile solidified on his face, and he immediately turned his head to look at the road. "What is your reason for taking on a part-time job?" She dared to ask when she saw that he didn't resist this kind of communication. Qian Shu lowered his eyes slightly, looking at those sparkling and curious eyes, and slowly uttered a sentence. "It should be idle." Excuse me. Lin Zhu smiled on the surface and swallowed the uncivilized but almost blurted out words that could express her current emotions. Just 3 short questions are enough to make Lin Zhu's mood fluctuate. Especially his last sentence. At first glance, he felt his voice was sincere. After careful consideration, Lin Zhu realized that he was indeed not lying. She is the only one who dares to be unlucky. Damn it. Watching her undisguised expression change, Qianshu's eyes were covered with a hint of interest and exploration. After a moment of self-enlightenment, Lin Zhu exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and glanced at him unconsciously. The corners of the mouth on that outstanding face were still slightly raised, showing no special emotions, and the conversation just now seemed to be just an illusion. The familiar silence struck again, and Lin Zhu looked at the eye-box. It wasn't too far on the map, but there was only half of the way left. Yes, they didn't talk much, after all, it's only been a few minutes. Lin Zhu sighed, feeling that the journey was long. To be honest, she is not good at interacting with strangers, let alone choosing topics that are just right. Most of the time, the decision to speak is based on intuition and current mood. Simply put, she, Lin Zhu, is really not a social bully. Qianshu saw her dim expression and casually said, I haven't seen you before. Ah. Lin Zhu didn't expect that he would take the initiative to open the topic, and couldn't resist roast. I just started half an hour ago, so it's normal that you haven't seen me. Qianshu paused and said, Thank you. Thank you. Lin Zhu was flattered and said seriously, if you have money to earn, it won't be difficult. Qianshu raised his eyebrows slightly and asked, Are you very short of money? Of course, why do I have to work if I don't lack money? Lin Zhu shrugged and answered nonchalantly, My total assets now are 123.75 yuan. Since he spoke first, of course she needs to liven up the atmosphere. Oh, he paused slightly, then chuckled lightly and said, Save some flowers. It's only the beginning of the month now. In the office, you can eat and live as long as you don't spend money recklessly, and you can make it until next month's salary. Lin Zhu looked up at him and stole a glance. This colleague didn't seem to be difficult to get along with either. That's great. Qianshu unconsciously controlled the direction of the topic and asked, Where are you from? Lin Zhu casually replied, Mount Sanqing on the outskirts of Nanqing is a small place. You should have never heard of it. I know, he said, there is a tree on the mountaintop that asks questions about the sky. Has it become so popular on the internet? Lin Zhu was shocked for a second, then suddenly remembered, oh yes, the internet celebrity. Is. Subconsciously trying to explain to him, but his brain experienced a brief short circuit, unable to make an accurate description. With a flash of inspiration, she exclaimed, It's a place where people from other places can be scammed for money. Qianshu. Lin Zhu actively added. Generations of villagers in Mount Sanqing have said that this tree is efficacious, close to the sky, and is a divine tree that looks like spring all the year round. Therefore, as long as there is a red belt on the tree, God will help you pay your wish if he sees it. Well, you know, the villagers who know how to write are bound to those who sell red satin. A red stripe for writing costs 100 yuan. Qianshu. So, that's why. Unlike her tone of condemnation just now, she had a slightly envious expression. It's still superstitious outsiders who are easy to deceive. Qianshu's eyes, which were vaguely hidden under his hair, narrowed slightly, and a rare hint of doubt flashed in his eyes. He rarely caught up with the girl's jumping thinking. She seems to treat him as an antique, even with thoughtful annotations. Anyway, Qianshu did feel her inexplicable obsession with money. After a while, he comforted for the first time, work hard. Of course, of course. Lin Zhu understood the implied meaning behind his words, after all, the commission for the task here is very high. Seeing her calm down, Qianshu whispered, You don't seem to believe that heaven will see it. Lin Zhu paused and smiled, No way. She had just said it very sincerely. Have you ever made a wish? He asked suddenly. No, Lin Zhu said honestly. He persisted and said, Why? Lin Zhu was confused and said, Why do you want to make it? He concluded, So you still don't believe it. Lin Zhu was immediately speechless, not understanding why he had broken the gradually improving atmosphere of chatting, but he was more serious about this. Even without looking at his face, she could sense the toughness hidden beneath his gentle tone. Inexplicably, Lin Zhu had a feeling of being seen through by him. If you don't answer, the other party will definitely continue to ask impatiently. She took a deep breath and suddenly felt like saying something unknowingly. What is unrelated to you, why are you asking this, you meddle too much, and so on. But when I think of his unremarkable appearance, retro style of speech, and even the warmth of a real person. Lin Zhu quickly threw the bad wording out of the air. When he was not in uniform, she couldn't even feel his breath. So it's okay if he can't fight, whether he's a human or a monster, this may be someone she can't afford to offend. It's better to treat each other with courtesy to avoid unnecessary complications. Quickly divert his attention. She quickly glanced at the map, but fortunately, she only needed to take one more turn to reach the target location. Oh, it's coming. Lin Zhu awkwardly changed the topic and wrapped his fingers around the tassels on his shoulder, evoking a fox smile, pretending to be regretful. We need to hurry up and start working. Qianshu lowered his head and glanced at her, his thin lips parted slightly, and his tone remained calm. It's you who wants to work. He repeated, work hard. Exam this guy. Will she deliberately point at her just because she didn't answer that question? Lin Zhu. Wow. There's a handsome guy. Sneak a glance, sneak another glance, sneak another glance, end of this chapter. Chapter 4. Is not only sharp, but also quite vengeful. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 is not only sharp, but also quite vengeful. Following the map through the crisscrossing alleys, turning the last corner, Lin Zhu finally saw the ancient house hidden deep inside. She stopped and looked down at the clear orange-black boundary on the ground. Step forward and step into that shadow. The red and orange sky is replaced by a gloomy mist, and the summer warmth felt on the skin instantly disappears. Even special uniforms cannot isolate the eerie chill that is like a snake and makes people shiver. With just one step, it can be seen that this is no longer reality. Lin Zhu restrained his smile and his body was tense. Subconsciously, he glanced at the recorder and saw him leisurely strolling nearby without any nervousness. She refocused her gaze on the ancient mansion, and the scenery in front of her suddenly changed. The shadow cast by the crabapple tree like a wall tightly surrounds the old house, and a black mist hovers over the square old house, terrifying and terrifying. Trees, shadows, and black aura blend together, isolating the entire ancient house from the outside world. She stood in place and looked around, but there was no one nearby. Has the logistics department finished work? If she remembers correctly, the emergency mission should be monitored nearby all day long. Forget it, give face to the colleagues in the logistics department, and she'll wait a little longer. It's also a good opportunity to reorganize this intelligence. Lin Zhu held his hands, pinched the lower half of his face with his right hand, and tapped his cheek with his index finger regularly. Recalling the relevant information of Task 2234. A few days ago, the operator of the Beijing General Administration received a phone call using the keywords marriage, bazi, and master. The operator checks the phone source address as soon as possible to preliminarily confirm the level of the incident and liaise with the investigator. It was confirmed that this was a common case of buying and selling corpses, paired with marriage, and was handed over to the current police station for investigation. However, the police station did not find the AB couple on the phone that day. The next morning, the Investigation Bureau detected energy fluctuations of the S.level ghost tribe in an ancient house in District 9 of the capital. In addition to the AB2 human races, there are 8 other human races and 1 deceased person in the ancient house. A total of 11 people were trapped. The Investigation Bureau will naturally take over non-human events. The 4 special investigators who took on the task were unable to break the barrier of the ancient mansion, so the information they obtained was limited. According to the latest report, 4 people have died so far. This is all the valid information. The information about this goal can only be described as S.level and ghost tribe. To be honest, she is not very clear about the S.level rating criteria and can only compare the difficulty of last year's assessment. But that was just an assessment. If faced with truly non-human beings, she shook her head, still breaking through the situation and exploring inside. After completing the task, we will contact the logistics department. Lin Zhu stood under a tall tree and looked up, then jumped in place, jumping back and forth on the branches in a particularly graceful but comical posture, and finally stood at the top of the tree. She gathered her index and middle fingers of her right hand and wiped them over her eyes, transforming the strong black aura from the ancient mansion into a spider web woven with shimmering black threads. Only those who are good at using formations can see the context. Strange, she murmured. Lin Zhu discovered that this black barrier was not a formation assisted by spiritual energy. It is constructed by combining plants, architecture, and another force that she is unaware of. This barrier and the formation bestowed upon her by White Star are two completely different ways of construction. Using objects as a formation, the eyes of the formation are naturally objects. Since they all originate from the same source, the only way to crack them is to find and destroy the array eye. Wherever one can see, except for the circle of crabapple trees, there are only the small corners exposed by the eaves of the courtyard. Lin Zhu quickly made a decision in his heart and placed it inside as an item of the formation eye. No wonder those 4 special investigators couldn't open it, their initial thinking was wrong. How about it? Seeing the recorder speak coldly, Lin Zhu jumped down from the tree, stood firm, and grabbed a bunch of messy hair. He intended to tease him, "Aren't you afraid of being deducted money?" Suddenly realizing that he was here to experience life. "You can go in," she replied. Qianchu's eyebrows lightly raised, as if he had heard an unexpected answer. "Do you understand formations?" "It's easy to say, I understand a little." Lin Zhu pretended to be humble. "There's nothing to hide, after all, I can't hide from this big demon recorder." Seeing him suddenly drooping his eyes, as if pondering the authenticity of her words, Lin Zhu's long-extinguished desire for victory was stirring in his heart. "Let me give you a try." She dropped a sentence and turned her head before leaving. "What you see is true, saying more is useless." Lin Zhu arrived at the entrance of the ancient house, leaped and hovered in mid-air. Find the weak vein, place your hands on the barrier, concentrate your spiritual energy and strength in your hands, and push vigorously on both sides. This kind of barrier made of objects is powerful and firm, even she has to work hard and exert all her strength. The handsome face gradually twisted, and the blue blood vessels on the forehead protruded faintly. The black mesh barrier under the delicate hands seemed to have a sharp blade cutting a mark on the cloth. As she exerted force, the crack slowly widened. However, beneath this black cloth, there is also a layer of black air that obscures sight and breath. Lin Zhu's expression was slightly condensed, he was such a skilled person in setting up formations. Surprisingly, a dual formation was used. Fortunately, the second layer is just a cover-up. She spread her arms open and grabbed the edge of the crack with 10 fingers, looking down with residual light, searching for the white figure. What about people? She is actually rarely provoked by outsiders to be competitive. After all, believe it or not, she knows it anyway. I inexplicably want to be more serious with him. We cannot let the big demon look down on her. Suddenly, a shadow enveloped her. The person beside him stood in the air, slightly bending down, and the silver satin black silk brushed against her cheek. The face, like a banished fairy, was within reach, and the breath was filled with a cold spring-like aura. She quickly grasped the gap, remained calm, but asked in a slightly twisted voice. "What are you doing?" Has the distance he maintained between his arms disappeared? "You were just calling me." Lin Zhu was momentarily speechless. That's not what she asked. Qianchu's expression was plain, without any ambiguity. "I see." As if certain, the calm and gentle voice rang in her ear, "You're very impressive." As soon as he spoke, Lin Zhu trembled all over, like a crab moving horizontally in mid-air and distancing himself from Qianchu. "I can't let go of my hands, I can only turn my body on my own." In order to refuse the unfolding of a certain atmosphere, Lin Zhu exerted all his strength and pulled a big hole in the black cloth strip with both hands, saying seriously, "I shouldn't have to worry about you when I go down, right?" The target strength of this task is not insignificant, but she shouldn't have to worry about her abilities either. She's just not sure how the recorder works, so if there's anything she needs to cooperate with, she should ask the insurance. Well, don't worry about me. Okay. Lin Zhu immediately changed his mind. Okay. Qian Shu. Lin Zhu, who received the answer, let go of his palm. The black hole was shrinking at a visible speed, and it had enough time to heal for the two to enter. She rubbed her sore wrist, looked at him with a strange expression, and said word by word, then you should also work hard. I always felt that his behavior just now was too strange, and Lin Zhu couldn't help but give him a nod. After speaking, she jumped down without hesitation and entered the black hole. This sentence made Qian Shu momentarily dazed, and suddenly, he smiled silently. This brief and genuine smile dispelled some of the indifference that covered his ink-like eyes. Not only sharp, but also quite vengeful. He thought. As he saw the barrier about to be sewn up, he gently raised his hand, as if an invisible wind blade flew out of his sleeve, tearing open a huge gap in the black cloth. Qian Shu walked in calmly, and before the crack disappeared, he raised his hand again, his slender fingers swiping a few times on the void. Falling from the air, the girl's vision instantly turned pitch black, her breathing filled with an unpleasant smell, and her ears were filled with the howling wind. Black hair and earrings intertwined and danced in the air, while the wide black pant hem spread like flowers from bottom to top. The darkness before her gradually faded, and Lin Zhu pressed down on the hem of her pants, carefully monitoring her foothold and quietly falling into the shadow of a mountain and stone landscape in the corner of the courtyard. As she stabilized her figure and glanced, her pupils suddenly contracted. Lin Zhu. Women cannot say no. Qian Shu. Update on March 23, 2023. Chapter 5 was blocked due to a bug-catching change. I will wait for the editor to help me unlock it. That chapter is very important, and those who haven't browsed it can wait to unlock it and then take a look. Chapter name. She is mute and working hard. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. She is mute and working hard. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. She is mute and working hard. Unlike the dim and gloomy atmosphere outside the barrier, this courtyard is illuminated brightly by red and orange lights. Lin Zhu could clearly see 4 bodies nailed to the wall, 3 of which were in a tragic state, covered in wounds and unrecognizable, with branches stained with blood ink on the wall beneath them. Their bodies glittered with the same soul body as their own, as if they could not break free from their bodies, and were firmly fixed in the body by a black fog. The remaining people, with grayish-blue skin, dressed in red wedding attire and drooping heads, were nailed to the wall like soft mud. 3 red liquids meandered down the wall, merging into a thin stream that dyed the shallow pool with floating duckweed in the center of the courtyard red. There was a broken humanoid statue in the pool, which was the source of the weak veins of the black barrier. A young girl knelt by the pool, her hands covering her mouth, her eyes lifeless, her body covered in blood and dirt, and her whole body emitting an uneasy aura. Under a courtyard wall, 6 people were trembling and kneeling on the ground. 11 people, this is the 11 people in the report. The cold and understated words in the materials and the absurdity generated by the blood-red reality made Lin Zhu's heart skip a beat. Without the mysterious lighting in horror movies, she saw such a bloody and tragic scene for the first time in reality. The air is mixed with the smell of rust and decay, but it cannot block the senses. After all, smell is also intelligence. After a moment, Lin Zhu exhaled a breath and quickly calmed his heartbeat. Leaning his head out sideways, Lin Zhu shifted his gaze to another area. What was supposed to be a joyful red light had now turned into a strange color. On the beams and pillars, there are written in ink. Ancestral achievements and virtues flow far and wide, sons are filial, grandsons are virtuous, and generations are prosperous. Follow this blush and explore further inside. After the main table with stacked red fruits, there is a wall composed of several hollow grids, and the object inside is a wooden plaque dedicated to the deceased. The candlelight on both sides of the wooden plaque was dim red, and at first glance, the red light flickered as if countless eyes were blinking. Under the crimson eyes were two half-open sleeping coffins. Lin Zhu hid behind the rocks and couldn't see clearly what was inside the coffin, but he could feel a strong and eerie aura of monsters emanating from the place where the Lei clan shrine was written. The aura of the formation eye was also present in the temple, but she was not clear about what object it was. We cannot act rashly at the moment, observe the situation first before making judgments. Fortunately, the uniqueness of the uniform was not noticed by the ghost tribe. Heavenly as medium, a male voice singing with a sharp voice suddenly emerged from the coffin. This voice is not loud, but it appears particularly clear in the quiet ancient house. Di Wei Shua, after singing this sentence, a crisp ringtone followed closely behind. Clear water has source. Ancient trees have roots. Dang dang, dang dang. Heaven bestows marriage fate, two chambers affection. With a creaking sound, the lyrics suddenly disappeared, replaced by a sweet and greasy voice. Time's up, can those who are honest first survive? A woman dressed as a bride suddenly stood up from the coffin like a corpse in a ghost film. Her voice should have been cute, but the fact made the 6 people by the courtyard wall even more frightened. Seeing no one respond, the woman in red jumped out of the coffin and casually threw out a tattered mobile phone. She walked lazily into the courtyard and stood there with a light leap, only half of her body remaining. She sat down from above, her long hair adorned with accessories floating on the shallow pool. The woman played with her bare fingers and casually said, "My patience is limited. Since we can't discuss it." Seeing her attention distracted, Lin Zhu adjusted his breathing and carefully moved his body, scrutinizing the target through the gaps in the rocks. The woman in red has beautiful features, and her face is full of mature makeup that is not suitable for her age. Even the thick foundation make-up cannot cover her blue skin color. Half of her neck is covered with thick white bones. Judging from her empty body, it must be that only her face is full of blood and flesh. Lin Zhu frowned as something flashed through her mind, but she didn't have time to think much. "Then I'll give you all again." The woman's red lips slightly parted, deliberately dragging her voice to apply pressure. 10 seconds is enough. I'm really considerate. This sweet voice was like a venomous snake, tightly entangled around the necks of 6 people. It seems that as long as the other party says something unsatisfactory to her, the next second the snake's mouth will open and bite its neck to inject venom. 10. 9. As she counted down, a man who looked like a thin monkey with a lump on his mouth half knelt and pointed to a fat woman with a frightened expression, saying, "It's her." His tone changed from uncertain to affirmative, and his voice grew from small to loud, as if finding a suitable scapegoat. "It's this matchmaker. It's her idea." Upon hearing the words of the skinny monkey, others also joined in. "Yes, yes. It's her, it's this matchmaker's idea. Right, right. Li Xiaozhen. Don't kill the wrong person, Xiaozhen. It's her, it's her. It's not related to us. Don't talk nonsense. I'm from the neighboring village, not your village." The matchmaker knelt down and waved his hands vigorously. "They said there was a beautiful college student who could get married during his lifetime. I was just using money to get things done. No, we are definitely not me. I am your parents' good friend. I am also your uncle. How could I do such a scumbag? Don't kill the wrong person, Xiaozhen." "Ha!" Li Xiaozhen let out a sneer. "It's like hearing something repulsive." Her face suddenly changed like a Sichuan opera face. Originally a face with makeup but seemingly innocent, now it has a face with gray and blue skin and crazy eyes. "It's really disgusting." Li Xiaozhen sneered as she lifted her bony hand and slowly spread out her 5 fingers before continuing to count down. 3, 2. The skinny monkey knelt on the ground, crying bitterly and pleading, Xiaozhen, what I said is the truth. Don't kill me, don't kill me. 1. As the last number fell, the 6 people crawling under the courtyard wall were suppressed by the aura of monsters and unable to move. Want to run? I've given you a chance, but who wouldn't let you cherish it? Li Xiaozhen gently gripped in the void, and the 6 people were lifted up by an invisible big hand, pounding their necks fiercely. Their faces twisted, their eyes protruded, and they let out mournful screams. Help! Save! Life! Help! Help! The struggle of everyone made Li Xiaozhen smile happily, and her eyes were filled with joy. At this critical moment, a flying stone hit the arm of the woman in red. Who is it? At the moment when Li Xiaozhen lost her mind. The 6 people suddenly fell from mid-air and collapsed to the ground. Some people passed out, while others coughed and took deep breaths, making fragmented cries for help from their throats. Lin Zhu tightened her body and silently stepped out from behind the rocks, ignoring the seeking gazes of those around her. Indulging monsters in work is against regulations. The lesson just now was enough, how to deal with them is not her responsibility. She had no intention of appearing so soon. But when this ghost clan named Li Xiaozhen took action, she also caught a flash of spiritual light just now. The report says she is an S-level ghost tribe. But in the book left to her by Bai Xing, it is mentioned that the ghost tribe is an entity formed by the soul's recultivation after a person's death. But Li Xiaozhen used her once decaying body in her breath, and the energy fluctuations that just appeared. Lin Zhu forcefully interrupted his thoughts. Now is not the time to think. She could feel that her gaze was on Li Xiaozhen. The bride has many accessories, but Lin Zhu has not yet found which item it is. In short, the first task is to remain vigilant and act with caution. Moreover, this ghost tribe seems to be mentally unstable, and speaking recklessly is likely to anger her. Li Xiaozhen saw the girl wearing earrings and uniforms walking out of the darkness and patted her hands coquettishly. Suddenly, she realized, oh, you're also the one in that game. I didn't expect that there are still powerful people in your unit who can break this barrier. Where are your companions hiding? Li Xiaozhen stood up and glared at her, with a hint of contempt in her voice. You alone can't break this barrier. Lin Zhu didn't know how to respond, so he could only casually utter one word. Ah. It's really pitiful. Li Xiaozhen's eyes showed a hint of pity. So he's a mute. Whether or not to say it, she actually set up a useful persona for her. Lin Zhu leaned forward slightly, concentrating his spiritual energy under his feet. This monster was unpredictable and likely to launch a surprise attack. She was fully focused, her ears and eyes ready to react and capture information for the battle. What Lin Zhu didn't expect was a wild laugh as she waited. Ha ha. Ha ha ha. The ghost tribe burst out laughing with a blue face, leaning back and forth, wiping away the tears from the corners of their eyes while pointing at her. Look. She's a mute who works hard. He pointed to the 6 people below, but you want to get something for nothing and use me to get married and make money. Ha ha ha. Exam. Give her back the nervousness. Has this ghost tribe not figured out what she does? Lin Zhu clenched his fist and let out a cooperative, ah. Li Xiaozhen suddenly stopped laughing, with a crazy expression in her eyes. She turned to Lin Zhu and said, Dumb, leave here with your companions. I don't want to harm innocent people. Lin Zhu tugged at the corner of his mouth and said, Help, this ghost tribe seems to have a single nerve. Subsequently, Li Xiaozhen paid no attention to her existence and extended her bony hand again, bending her fingers slightly in an instant. Lin Zhu. My fists are hard. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Let her see the cow knife in a small trial. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Let her see the cow knife in a small trial. It's windy, but within this boundary, you can't feel the wind at all. Li Xiaozhen's eyes were wide open, with fluttering hair and an expressionless young girl's face reflected in her pupils. In the next moment, she felt her hands being held captive by an irresistible force. "Are you lying to me?" It seemed that Li Xiaozhen's voice suddenly became sharp, as she was provoked by the girl's actions. She broke free from the confinement and distanced herself from Lin Zhu, asking incredulously, "Even you want to lie to me?" The voice was loud and piercing, but it seemed to be mixed with a desire to find the answer. Lin Zhu didn't answer, just looked thoughtfully into his palm. If the previously sensed aura may have been Li Xiaozhen deliberately suppressing her strength, then Lin Zhu's recent probing confirmed two conjectures in her heart. 1. This ghost tribe has a strong aura, but her own strength is not strong. This cognition relieved her, but new problems also emerged. Where did she get her breath? Li Xiaozhen was once again angered by the girl's silence. She opened her arms and shouted into the sky, "Ah, ah, ah." The sound was extremely piercing, like that of a human or a beast. The two different voices mixed together, as if carrying intangible power. The few people who had been struggling to survive passed out completely, and the woman with lifeless eyes lost consciousness in this moment. The long hair coiled behind Li Xiaozhen was like several tentacles, and with a swoosh, it flew towards Lin Zhu. Feeling this force, Lin Zhu restrained his mind and quickly moved away, leaping forward and landing on the roof of the ancestral hall. With a loud bang, debris splattered everywhere where she had just stepped. After realizing that she had dodged a blow, Li Xiaozhen became even more angry and said, "Are you really lying to me? Why don't you pay attention to me?" Lin Zhu sighed helplessly, because she was pretending to be mute and silly. 2. The thinking of this ghost tribe is extremely chaotic and illogical. If Li Xiaozhen could threaten her, Lin Zhu might even try his best to coax her a few words. "I had a good heart to let you go. But you treated me like this. Why did you ignore me?" Li Xiaozhen drooped her upper body, revealing half of her necklace from inside her wedding dress as she bent down. She suddenly regained her senses and quickly put the necklace back into her clothes. Surprisingly, she also remembered the character she had set for the girl and shouted, "Little mute, then don't blame me." Lin Zhu raised his eyebrows. If he valued it so much, then this necklace wouldn't have gone unnoticed. She should also work now. Li Xiaozhen's attack did not stop. Lin Zhu jumped up and down, easily avoiding all her hair, and she ran back and forth on the eaves. His 10 fingers met and closed, rapidly changing. Slowly, small dust particles appeared in mid-air, each of which shimmered with a faint silver light, forming a diamond shape that enveloped the 11 people in the yard. Although setting up one's own formation in someone else's formation can greatly reduce its power. But if those people were accidentally injured by hair or stone fragments, even if they didn't die, they probably wouldn't be much better. If the main person dies, money will be deducted. Seeing that her hair was useless in attacking, Li Xiaozhen lifted her hand, which was only bones left, and clenched it time and time again. The invisible power was repeatedly dodged by the girl. "Why can't you hit her? Don't you have the power now? Why still can't you hit her? Why does she have the leisure to do other things? Even she looks down on herself. Has she been pretending all along? Why did you lie to her?" These doubts seemed to be a huge and indelible shadow in Li Xiaozhen's heart. She was about to stimulate her hair again, but the figure on the eaves was nowhere to be seen. Li Xiaozhen looked panicked as she searched around but couldn't find any trace of the girl. Lin Zhu summoned his spiritual energy, and his figure flashed behind Li Xiaozhen. He deliberately poked her shoulder and attached a talisman to her back. "Hey, are you looking for me?" Li Xiaozhen gritted her teeth and wanted to look back, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't break free from the constraints that controlled her. "Are you not mute? You are indeed deceiving me." Lin Zhu felt that she was almost being disturbed by this ghost tribe, and at this moment, a crazy sentence flashed in her mind. 120. 120, doctor. Quickly take her back for treatment. Is the focus now on her mute persona? Li Xiaozhen angrily said, what did you do? Lin Zhu was very satisfied with this question and said, I didn't do anything, I just posted a fixed amulet for you. Curse. It's impossible. It's impossible. Li Xiaozhen exclaimed in shock, where are your companions hiding? They must be helping you. The ghost tribe below says that no one can use talismans now. Just a few thin sheets of paper, in this era, there is no power left, and she doesn't believe this girl can do it. She must be lying to her. She's still lying to her. Lin Zhu raised his eyebrows, that's great. She accepted this provocation, so let's try it out and let her see. She pulled out a talisman from her waist bag and threw it at Li Xiaozhen's feet. Li Xiaozhen felt a chill coming over her. She lowered her head and saw that her lower body was sealed by a large block of ice. It took more than 10 seconds for the ice to melt. Li Xiaozhen didn't even have time to resist, and Lin Zhu explained in a serious tone, this is an ice talisman. The cooling talisman is just a basic version of the ice talisman. After clearing a lot of the cooling talismans, Lin Zhu added a few more ice talismans for later use. Unexpectedly, they came in handy. As she spoke, she swung a yellow talisman held in her finger towards Li Xiaozhen's legs. The talisman fell and instantly turned into a blue crystal that wrapped around Li Xiaozhen's legs, freezing her hair on the ground. As long as you fight against Li Xiaozhen, you will know that she has an S-level aura and her true strength is like a paper tiger, shattering at a touch. She kept in mind the mission goal of minimizing fatal damage to the target. So, the only thing Lin Zhu can do is to use talismans to control her movements. Although thinking this way at the moment may not be appropriate. But Lin Zhu learned very important information through testing with Li Xiaozhen. An ice talisman can only control her for about 10 seconds. A beginner immobilization talisman can barely control her. When using talismans, it does not consume spiritual energy, but drawing requires a considerable amount of spiritual energy. It seems that we need to bring fewer talismans in the future. Lin Zhu sighed inwardly. A true S-level monster wouldn't be as easy to deal with as Li Xiaozhen, but her abilities were enough to make ordinary humans unable to resist. She counted down time in her mind, throwing talismans to control Li Xiaozhen. Lin Zhu could see very clearly that beneath Li Xiaozhen's neck, where her bones were exposed, was a black necklace made of indistinguishable material. At such close range, she could clearly perceive the same aura emanating from the necklace as the black barrier. Li Xiaozhen understood the girl's intention and her body trembled without warning. She tried to break free from her constraints, but in vain, only shaking her head to show resistance. How did she know? How did she discover this necklace? A pair of slender and fair hands gradually approached her neck, and Li Xiaozhen's face suddenly cut back to the face that was completely devoid of makeup. She choked up, as if she was possessed by a demon, shouting with extremely complex emotions, no, 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 no. S level to D level, it's reasonable to make it easier. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Is naturally intended for some leaders to read. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 is naturally intended for some leaders to read. The strong emotional impact rushed towards Lin Zhu, causing him to be slightly stunned for a second. She suddenly had a delusion that she was taking Li Xiaozhen's most precious possession. Sorry, silly monster, Lin Zhu said unconsciously. Who made her work? As soon as the necklace touched Lin Zhu's palm, it immediately turned into black powder. Li Xiaozhen no longer had the eerie and powerful aura she had before. Lin Zhu looked at the remaining black marks on his palm and frowned slightly. Is this necklace also the source of her breath? At the same time, the black barrier that enveloped the ancient mansion instantly disappeared, and the thick black mist dissipated, replaced by a deep night, revealing another layer of white flowing light in the sky. This is a third-party basic eye-blocking formation. In order to control the consumption of spiritual energy in his body, Lin Zhu removed the defensive formation while restraining Li Xiaozhen. At the moment when Lin Zhu turned his head, a wave of cheers erupted. A dozen or so staff members with black armbands rushed in from outside, running towards the human race lying on the ground. When passing by Lin Zhu, some even threw wild glances at her. It actually opened. It's been so hard, Special Investigator. Hurry up, brothers. Get off work early. Lei Yunliang, Lei Mingji, Lei Qing, and Shui Yong have all died, all dreaming of spirits. I'm X, how many people are still alive? Oh, these few are all dizzy, it's so convenient. Oh, it turns out to be an ice-based special investigator, it's really rare. The person in charge of the roster should quickly contact the person below to apply for that. Lin Zhu. Where and what to apply for? Wait, so where did they all go from the beginning? She was startled, fortunately the formation withdrew early. The spell she independently uses will also ignite over time. Hearing someone misunderstand her ability, Lin Zhu didn't explain it. It's exactly what she wants. Li Xiaozhen covered her face and wept as soon as she saw that the situation had passed. This crying is full of sorrow and grievances, causing several employees who were working to frequently turn around and cast complex gazes. Seeing her give up resistance, Lin Zhu completely relaxed. Once he relaxed, the fatigue accumulated during the journey suddenly surged forward. Lin Zhu shook his arm and asked inexplicably. Why are you crying? You bullied me. I don't have it. She roared, you have it. Lin Zhu was provoked by this righteous accusation and closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. The smell of blood, decay, and powder mixed together into the nose, and the source of these smells is Li Xiaozhen. Lin Zhu immediately blocked her senses. Alright, for the sake of not revealing that she knew how to spell, she didn't have the same view as the irrational ghost tribe. The ice under Li Xiaozhen's legs melted again, and she realized that struggling was futile. She simply sat on the ground with her knees in place, shouting loudly, not only you. They. But also my parents are all bullying me. Lin Zhu decided to ignore her. This ghost tribe just wanted to vent their emotions and didn't need an answer. She stroked her hair, her gaze inadvertently fixed on the swaying candles and a wall of plaques. Although she was somewhat concerned about what Li Xiaozhen said, her work had already been completed, and the story and truth behind the task were not something she should worry about. She needs to cover the curious box. Okay. Open it once and there's no problem. Lin Zhu suddenly spoke up, why did you let her go? The buyer is on the wall, and the 6 people in the corner are the seller. So who is that unscathed girl? Li Xiaozhen tilted her head, her teary eyes hazy, and a hint of a smile appeared on her dirty face. She looks like me. Like her. Lin Zhu missed the smile and lowered her head to see Li Xiaozhen sitting on the ground with disheveled hair. Her eyes were dim and murky, her lips slightly parted, but she didn't utter a single syllable. The answer just now was like an illusion. After satisfying her curiosity, Lin Zhu suddenly felt a sense of powerlessness and swallowed the words behind her. Glancing at the busy staff, trying to hope for someone to meet her gaze. Help, can anyone tell her the workflow? What should she do now? Oh, Xiaolin, I didn't expect you to handle it so quickly. A loud female voice suddenly sounded, and Lin Zhu's eyes lit up, looking eagerly in the direction of the sound. I saw a tall and graceful woman wearing a white gold uniform walking with a smile. Her black hair, tied in long braids, is adorned with sparkling ornaments. Her wheat-colored skin and exotic features exude an indescribable mature temperament on her body. I am the person in charge of external logistics, Jiao Sanshao. I will be the one who messaged you this afternoon. Jiao Sanshao patted Lin Zhu's shoulder cheerfully. Oh, it's you, oh. Lin Zhu covered his chest and blinked, feeling a bit dazed by the force. He thought to himself that people are indeed multifaceted. She never expected that this minister, who spoke cleanly online, would be a straightforward and somewhat silly adult woman in reality. Even at night, she was blinded by the dazzling white teeth. She asked, "Minister Jiao, what else should I do now? You can finish work now. Just leave this to us." Jiao Sanson squatted down and nodded at the forehead of the already lost ghost tribe, then without any pity, flipped several times over Li Xiaozhen who had collapsed to the ground. "This move is too obvious, Minister." Lin Zhuxian politely replied to the previous sentence, then squatted next to Jiao Sanson, pretending to be skeptical and asked, "By the way, are you looking for this?" She spread out her right hand, with some black powder sticking to her palm. She recounted the story and then wrapped the remaining powder in a piece of rune paper, handing it to Jiao Sanson. Compared to the mystery of the task, Lin Zhu only wants to finish work early now. Jiao San was taken aback, let out a dry cough, and naturally took over. Lin Zhu shifted the topic quite nicely. "Do I still need to cooperate with the police station?" She remembered that there was a task written to ask the special investigator to cooperate with the investigation. Jiao San waved his hand and said, "No need, you completed it too quickly. We will coordinate the follow-up work, and you can leave work. Oh, by the way, remember to fill out the form in the taskbar app when you go back." "Oh, okay, then I'll leave work first." As the words go, Lin Zhu stood in the yard and didn't leave for a long time. Her eyes were already glued to the staff of the logistics department. The logistics department consists of internal and external components. The external tasks of logistics include erasing memories, registering for rebirth, building restoration, and other field work. This job alone is enough to arouse everyone's curiosity. Logistics External, awarded the title of the most mysterious department in Lin Zhu's heart in the investigation bureau. Perhaps her eyes were too hot. Seeing her motionless, Jiao San easily pushed her out and flipped Lin Zhu over. "There are some things you can't even see if you want to see them." Lin Zhu's face showed confusion and said, "What is it written on the materials for?" Jiao San patted her shoulder and said with a smile, "Of course it's for some leaders to see. How to report the funding without writing it mysteriously." Lin Zhu. This is a hard-to-refute practical reason. After confirming Lin Zhu's departure, Jiao Sanson took out the box. Jiao San's can, Rear Minister of Foreign Affairs. Black powder appears. Director Wan Shichen. "Okay, you are working normally." Jiao San's can, Minister of Foreign Affairs. A good game. The female protagonist is really not the Holy Mother. Her personality is not as kind as everyone thinks. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. You answer questions, I'll take you back. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. You answer questions, I'll take you back. So, how should I go back? How can we go back from this remote old area? Lin Zhu stood outside the courtyard door, crossed his waist, and looked around. Except for the lights in the ancient house, everything in his sight was covered in darkness. Wait, she seems to have seen several brightly colored sedans that didn't come yet, and those were members of the logistics department. She turned around and saw that her colleagues inside were busy working with enthusiasm. Lin Zhu put away her thoughts carefully. Can she only walk to the city to take a taxi back? Her savings are not enough. The driver during the day begged hard and offered her a good price before she was willing to send her over. At this point, I'm afraid no one is willing to drive to Highway 11. Lin Zhu tightly pursed her lips, lowered her head, and her gaze fell to the ground. At her feet, there also appeared a junction of light and shadow. That was just the shadow formed by the light and the building, and now she is already immersed in reality. The reality is that the night sky in the city is just a simple black screen, not like Mount Sanqing, which has a vast starry sky. So. She has nothing here. Oh, there is still 123 yuan and 75 cents in the bag. Lin Zhu suppressed his emotions and angrily took out the box. Lin Zhu, S.Level Special Investigator. Uncle Wan, I can't go back. Director Wan Shichen. Automatic reply, it is now the end of work time. I will contact everyone again when I go to work. It seems that Uncle Cheap doesn't even have the last bit of conscience. It's better to have thick skin than to beg Uncle Wan. Lin Zhu wisely turned back and honestly approached Jiao Sanson, whispering, So, Minister Jiao, what time do you guys finish work? Oh, Xiaolin, haven't you gone back yet? Upon hearing the girl's voice, Jiao San swept the black cloth mop in his hand to the ground, rolled up his sleeves, and looked at the sparkling watch. It's only 8 o'clock now, we probably have to be busy until 12 o'clock. In the shadow of Jiao San Shan, the black cloth mop quietly wrapped several strips of cloth around the wheat-colored ankle. It lifted a strip of cloth and poked in the direction of the poke Lin Zhu. After being kicked by Jiao San Shan, it immediately pretended to be dead. What's wrong, Xiaolin? Jiao San Shan asked with a pleasant expression, It's okay, it's okay. Lin Zhu glanced at the diamond watch and hesitated for a moment before probing, I just wanted to ask, can you give me a ride when you go back? It's impossible for Uncle Qin to pick her up from the dormitory. Now is not the time to be reserved, at least we have had 2 communications with Minister Jiao, not just a literal stranger. Oh my, I've forgotten that you came to work the day before. Jiao Sanshan heard the embarrassment in the little girl's voice and said straightforwardly, So, I'll find a child to take you back first. After speaking, she was worried that she wouldn't agree, so she added, You've relieved them a lot of burden, don't be polite. Director Jiao's voice was loud, and several nearby staff members were all perking up their ears, waiting for the next sentence of breath, preparing to recommend themselves to Mao Tui. After all, this was a rare opportunity to catch fish. Slowly send the newcomers back, and then slowly stroll back. Isn't it time to finish work once and for all? Don't. Lin Zhu quickly waved his hand and took 2 steps back, afraid of being pressed by Minister Jiao. I'll wait for you to finish work. If it's convenient for you later, please let me know before you leave. I'll go sit outside and play with the box. Colleagues with erect ears are all deflated. Okay. Jiao San scanned and saw her resolute attitude, so he didn't say anything more. He replied cheerfully, I'll call you later then. Okay, trouble you. Seeing the little girl running away in a frenzy, Jiao San slapped the pole of the black cloth mop and muttered in a low voice, Do you see how sensible she is? How serious is her work? She pointed to a pool of blood mixed with dust and stones on the floor of the ancestral hall and said, Look at you again. You are picky at work, and if you don't work hard, I will deduct your monthly meal. Upon hearing this, Black Cloth immediately tried to please his owner by rubbing his legs with twisted strips of cloth, like a pet. Then he slowly moved into the pool of mixed blood and made a sucking sound. The sound stopped and the ground was clean as new. Jiao Sanson nodded contentedly, praising and commanding, That's right. Go ahead and clean up the outside wall as well. Black Cloth nodded fiercely, and its head was the mop pole, so that Jiao Sanson was caught off guard and hit hard. She covered her forehead and gave a fierce blow, accompanied by a demonic whisper, You haven't received any monthly meal allowance. Black Cloth. After filling out the form and adding Aunt Wei's number, Lin Zhu lay on the roof of an empty mansion. As long as she lowers her head downwards, she can clearly see the situation inside the ancient house through the blindfold formation. She decided to wait for her colleagues to finish their work and go brush her face as soon as possible. After all, the minister is busy with work, and Lin Zhusheng is afraid that he might be left behind here. The downside of lying on the roof is that her back hurts a bit, but fortunately, both her body and mind have relaxed a bit. She just needs to pass a few hours, wait for the logistics department to finish work, and then take Minister Jiao's car back. So, her day came to an end. What Lin Zhu saw in his eyes was still the empty night sky, and he also found it pleasing to the eye. Well, there's nothing right now, but I can get my salary next month, and even if I have money, I can go home anywhere. I can buy a lot of things I want, and there will be new games released next month. I don't know if I have time to play. Lin Zhu muttered with his eyes narrowed for a while, and came up with a truth. Oh, going to work is really annoying. How did you say that? If it weren't for the sword, I wouldn't be able to protect you, but holding the sword, I can't hug you anymore. For her, if she doesn't work, she won't have the money to enjoy life, and if she works, she won't have the time to enjoy life. TSK 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 TSK. Classic, worthy of her. The blurry scene in the eyes unconsciously added a touch of white. Lin Zhu half squinted his eyes. Where did he get the white color? Wait, white. Lin Zhu sat up in a daze, almost thinking he had blinked. On the black and white brocade robe, hidden building embroidery, shimmering silver forging intertwined with green silk falls on her shoulders. In this quiet night, figures like the clear wind and bright moon are leaning over to look at her. Lin Zhu was taken aback for a moment, and immediately realized that she had forgotten to lift the sensory blockade, so she did not smell the cold breath. Why are you here? She was so surprised that she almost bit her tongue. Qianshu naturally lifted her clothes, sat down beside her, and calmly said, because I'm too idle. Lin Zhu choked on his line again. Okay, she can't stop him from wandering around. Why are you still here? He asked back. Lin Zhu instinctively moved a piece of space aside and replied. I'm waiting for Minister Jiao to finish work and take her ride back to the bureau. As she finished speaking, her stomach began to rumble. I'm really good at timing, but unfortunately, it's time to shout. Lin Zhu deceived himself and closed his eyes, trying to brainwash him. You didn't hear anything, you didn't hear anything, you didn't hear anything. Perhaps because we talked the most today, Lin Zhu felt inexplicably reassured and friendly when talking to him again. It's really a strange thing. Qianshu frowned and said, when are you waiting? 12 o'clock. Lin Zhu rubbed his stomach. Seeing him staring at her, Lin Zhu thought something was on her face. She shook her head like an animal shaking water, then wiped her face and said, is there something on my face? No. Qianshu supported his chin with one hand and smiled at the corners of his mouth. His originally cold demeanor inexplicably added a hint of youthful energy. He said, let's make a deal. You answer the question, and I'll send you back. Lin Zhu. Everyone has money and leisure, which is enviable. JPG, end of this chapter. Chapter 9. Curiosity makes people insatiable. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Curiosity makes people insatiable. This is congratulatory news for Lin Zhu, who is both hungry and tired. However, she also recognized the flaws, and this problem is not an exact number. 1 is also a problem, 10 is also a problem. She boldly guessed that the question he would ask must include the afternoon question. And he didn't say how to send her back, where to send her, every detail, there are all loopholes in his words. She wouldn't be fooled so easily as he wished. Seeing her hesitant, Qianshu casually added chips and said, where do you want to go back? Lin Zhu blinked and said curiously, what are the options? Qianshu said calmly, at the entrance of the investigation bureau, the courtyard park, and... When Lin Zhu heard the first option, his eyes lit up. How could he be so detailed? She even rehearsed and said goodbye to Minister Jiao in her mind. Compared with the troublesome and busy minister, the troublesome and busy recorder is also kind and friendly. Enough, you ask me. Lin Zhu interrupted him and immediately sat upright. I absolutely know everything and can't stop talking. It doesn't matter if you hit your own face. Whether it's a few or a dozen, afternoon or evening questions, he can ask whatever he wants. Since he dares to promise, there is naturally a way to send her back. Who makes him a big demon who can warm up real people? Oh, Qianshu said leisurely as he saw her take the bait, a hint of a smile overflowing in his eyes. Let me think about it first. This unexpected response instantly froze Lin Zhu's smile. She looked at her outstanding face in disbelief, almost engraving the words, "I didn't think about what transaction you made," on her face. Qianshu narrowed his eyes and smiled again, with a hint of schadenfreude. Don't worry, there's still a lot of time. Let me think slowly. Exam. If she couldn't be sure before, now she can be 100% certain that this guy is still interrupting her afternoon matter. The statue of this peak snow figure had cracks in her heart. Okay, don't worry, take your time to think. Lin Zhu unconsciously increased his volume and turned his head to stop looking at him. Qianshu's fingers undulated up and down on his knees, watching with great interest the girl's changing expression on her profile. Just when Lin Zhu thought he had to wait at least 10 minutes to ask the first question, his warm voice slowly sounded. He asked, why choose the dual cultivation of the rune array? With her talent and physique, even in today's world, there are many options to choose from. Oh, because a stack of talismans costs only 50 yuan, and a brush costs 3.5 yuan. Lin Zhu pointed to his finger, the formation only requires a brain and hands. The quality of the materials does not affect the effect of the talisman as much, it's just that drawing different levels of talismans requires more or less spiritual energy consumption. The formation is even simpler: watch, remember, and practice more. Looking at his indifferent face with a slightly unusual expression, Lin Zhu couldn't help but smile. He definitely didn't expect such a pragmatic reason. Lin Zhu spread out his hand and said, even if I can afford weapons, I can't maintain them or throw them away. Qianshu understood very well and said, you're right. He was also right, but Lin Zhu inexplicably clenched his fist. Qianshu paused and said, why did you apologize to her? What are you sorry for? Lin Zhu looked puzzled. Qianshu brushed his sleeves, and a water mirror appeared in front of them. The image projected from it was when Lin Zhu was about to pull off the necklace and whispered, sorry, silly monster. Wow! Lin Zhu exclaimed in surprise, pointing to the water mirror and asking, is this the image projected by the shadow stone? The things from the investigation bureau are really impressive. He replied, yes, it's not. Oh, then consider it good. Lin Zhu has always been very open-minded about these small issues. She was also puzzled by that sentence, but couldn't figure out why, so she said, at that time, I always had the illusion of taking away her most precious thing. Perhaps it was because I felt a little guilty in my heart. Qianshu nodded and did not comment on her answer, continuing to ask, do you sympathize with her? Do you mean that ghost tribe? Lin Zhu tilted his head and answered honestly, I can't talk about it. I'm afraid we only have today's fate. After the mission is over, she and I are strangers, and I have no reason to sympathize with her. Moreover, there is nothing to sympathize with. As she spoke and thought, she couldn't help but extend her right hand and tighten her fingers slightly before releasing them again. The palm was still adorned with black marks, and the touch of grasping Li Xiaozhen's bare wrist was still lingering. The voice containing complex emotions also echoed in her mind. Lin Zhu curled his mouth and muttered, if I have to say something, I just care about this task. It would be dim-sum tiring, so I didn't want to think about the task at that time. When he mentioned it, her curiosity box was also opened. Oh yes, keep asking. I almost forgot. It's now his home court. No problem, you keep talking. Lin Zhu looked at him suspiciously, thinking that he would be entangled in the afternoon issue, but what he asked was actually today's experience. Is this the daily work report mentioned in the manual? But thinking about it is also right, he is a recorder. They received the same intelligence during the mission. But does this mean that he also really wants to talk to her, just to help her go back in another way? After all, answering questions would allow you to teleport back to the unit, which is too advantageous. This turned out to be a guy with a cold face and a hot heart. I looked at him with admiration. Lin Zhu decided to use an awl to smash another crack on the statue. She pondered for a moment and said, "Let's start from scratch." Firstly, Li Xiaozhen's motive is clear. As a victim, she wants to seek revenge against both parties involved in the Yin marriage transaction. Let's not discuss how Li Xiaozhen returned to her own body for now. You should have noticed this anomaly as well. She refers to a flash of inspiration in the afternoon. In the book left to her by Bai Xing, it is mentioned that the ghost tribe is an entity formed by the soul's recultivation after death. However, Li Xiaozhen uses her once decaying body. Lin Zhu held his hands and pinched the lower half of his face with his right hand, saying straightforwardly, "I think there is a third party hidden in this task." Qian Shu stopped his finger movement and nodded on his knee. "Let's talk about it." Lin Zhu nodded and continued to analyze. Li Xiaozhen's S.level aura is fake, and the necklace is also the source of her aura. Obviously, someone gave her this necklace. What I don't understand the most is why Li Xiaozhen was selected by a third party. To be blunt, she doesn't have anything special. Is the third party so kind, just letting her hide in the ancient mansion of the powerful barrier to seek revenge against that group of people? Still under the watchful eye of the investigation bureau. Lin Zhu looked serious and said, "Actually, I felt a strange, unheard of aura on the black barrier. The only thing that can be used for cultivation now is spiritual energy." "So, where does this non-spiritual energy come from?" Lin Zhu slapped her face hard, which is why she always forcefully interrupts her thoughts. Curiosity makes people insatiable. As long as you open one layer, you will want to see what is buried underneath the second layer. She is now considering what the investigation bureau needs to solve. This is not a concern for her as an ordinary employee. Talking to the recorder for a while and thinking about it is enough. In the days to come, she may encounter end tasks that are full of fog. She knew she couldn't solve every puzzle. It's better to let nature take its course. Lin Zhu regained his composure and turned his head. "Do you know the answer?" Seeing him calm and indifferent, Lin Zhu couldn't help but draw this conclusion. Qian Shu chuckled lightly and repeated, "Yes, it's not. The answer is very fitting to someone else's design." Lin Zhu. "It was because I didn't have money that I came down the mountain, End of this chapter. Chapter 10. I exam it surprisingly true. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. I exam it surprisingly true. Seeing her slightly lowered eyes, Qian Shu was considering whether he should make up for it, but he heard her speak. "It's also great, partner. Let's discuss and don't proactively tell me anything you know in the future." Just now, Lin Zhu had a sense of seeing Li Xiaozhen again. Although it was hitting her own face again, she was also looking forward to meeting her again unexpectedly. "Why?" Lin Zhu hugged his knees and swayed left and right like a tumbler, saying, "If all the puzzles could be solved at once, it would be too boring." She enjoys the process of thinking and searching very much. After a moment, the pleasant male voice sounded, similar to the tone of daytime, but with a hint of other meaning. "If the answers to most puzzles are the same, do you still have to solve them?" The tumbler paused for a moment, although he didn't quite understand what he was pondering. He still sincerely said, "Of course I will." After speaking, Lin Zhu couldn't help but ask back, "Your question is very strange. Do you know that I'm using puzzles to metaphorically describe curiosity? This guy's focus is so strange." Lin Zhu's curiosity is only a small part of human curiosity. For example, name, origin, age, personality, preferences, and so on. For example, her experience with Li Xiaozhen. These are just small fragments of curiosity. For her, the more unique a person is, the more she wants to know someone. So, how can there be exactly the same people in the world? Listening to his meaning, Lin Zhu always felt that it was different from what she thought. Seeing that the other party hadn't replied for a while, Lin Zhu thought he was pretending to be cold again, so he turned around. Just like in the afternoon, that immortal-like face always carried an unchanging yet elusive expression and smile. But for the first time, Lin Zhu felt a kind of reality from his smile. She smiled quite nicely, but she couldn't understand him. So what? Lin Zhu deliberately changed the tone and decided to break the atmosphere just now, nodding him by the way. The joy of discussing puzzles lies in going back and forth, don't you understand? The emphasis of this sentence is placed on once and for all. It can be said that it is clear. I understand. Qianshu smiled and responded. Seeing that he was in a good mood, Lin Zhu took the opportunity to say, so why don't you chat a few more words about task 2234 at least? She also wants to hear and see his thoughts. Qianshu said, we have the same idea. Fuck it. Looking at his face now, I don't even feel a sense of distance, but rather his hands itch. Seeing her rare emotional fluctuations, Qianshu decided not to tease her anymore and casually asked again, where do you want to go back? Lin Zhu looked at him suspiciously. In the afternoon, she truly felt the persistent personality hidden beneath his warm exterior. He actually showed great compassion and took the initiative to let her go. She couldn't help but ask, wait a moment, besides the entrance of the investigation bureau, there are other options in the courtyard park. And your dormitory, Qianshu said in a deep sense. Of course, you can also go back to Mount Sanqing. Why go back to Mount Sanqing? Lin Zhu raised 3 fingers without thinking, I choose 3, I choose 3. Who would choose to take a few more steps to get back to the dormitory directly? Ah! Lin Zhu jumped up in place, I'll go tell Minister Jiao first, you wait for me. She ran away quickly and came back quickly. Qianshu gave her a deep glance, and the girl's face cleared of melancholy. She wore a messy hairstyle caused by being rubbed and running too fast, with her eyes shining brightly. Returning to the roof, Lin Zhu straightened his waist. She felt like she was about to be teleported away, and his ability to accurately locate her dormitory room was absolutely remarkable. Lin Zhu couldn't contain his excitement and said, what should I do? Just stand up. She took advantage of this transaction too much, right? She's a bit embarrassed. Qianshu lowered his gaze fixed on the distance between the two. After a while, he waved his sleeve, and an irregular spatial crack suddenly appeared behind Lin Zhu. Unlike the black hole in the mission, this gap is a blank space. Fall back, he said. Lin Zhu turned around in shock and didn't see anything. Lin Zhu gave him a puzzled glance and hesitated for a second. He wrapped his arms around him and put on a posture of facing death as if returning home. Then I collapsed. She believed that he couldn't be the kind of person who was idle and boring. Wouldn't intentionally see her make a fool of herself. Damn it, the first half of this sentence doesn't seem to have much persuasiveness. Lin Zhu comforted herself. It's okay, at most she can fall, and she may not even fall yet. Qianshu nodded and extended his slender hand, flapping it slightly, resembling the movements of driving away cats and dogs. Lin Zhu closed his eyes and stood straight back, falling into the crack. As another spatial crack appeared. The next second, Lin Zhu was bounced a few times by the mattress. She lay sprawled on the bed, looking at the pale yellow ceiling. If there were bullet comments, her mind would already be filled with countless combinations of dirty words. Most of the time, it's true that I took the exam. Who the hell is he? How did he do it? How could this be possible? He completely shattered Lin Zhu's understanding of cultivators, and she could completely forgive his curiosity in strange places. The extreme chaos plunged Lin Zhu into a transcendent Buddhist realm. She picked up the box in a daze, trying to find someone to share her feelings with. Director Wan Shichen. What's wrong, Mumu? I was busy just now and didn't see it. How was my first day at work today? Lin Zhu, S.Level Special Investigator. Uncle Cheap, please don't ask me any questions about going to work after work. Lin Zhu, S.Level Special Investigator. Also, I have arrived at the dormitory. Director Wan Shichen. Oh, did your partner take you back? Lin Zhu, S.Level Special Investigator. Yes, he sent me back. Director Wan Shichen. Soon. Lin Zhu, S.Level Special Investigator. Director Wan Shichen. How to evaluate it? Lin Zhu, S.Level Special Investigator. Director Wan Shichen. He's so handsome. He's so strong. He's so powerful. Lin Zhu, S.Level Special Investigator. Director Wan Shichen. Lin Zhu deleted the sentence "really handsome" from the dialog box and changed it to, "Could you please push my partner's business card or number? I will get along well with him." A carp stood on its side, and Lin Zhu sat by the bed, patting his face in an attempt to calm himself down. Don't look at them chatting happily tonight, but they have only known each other for a day. She's not stupid. From Uncle Wan's previous words, it seems like she deliberately wanted them to know each other. Not to mention being curious about the mission objectives, it's always a stranger. For long-term partners, it is important to maintain a sense of propriety. Just understand that he is a good person, monster. Gulyalu. Lin Zhu rubbed his empty stomach and looked at the time. Fortunately, the cafeteria did not close. Eating is not active, thinking is problematic. She didn't change her clothes, so she quickly ran to the cafeteria on the third floor of the Western-style house. The information about the cafeteria has all been highlighted with key points, which really made her curious about how delicious the cafeteria in the bureau is. The third-floor cafeteria is filled with fragrance, bright lights, and cozy decoration. Photos of food hung on the light orange walls, woven lanterns hung from the ceiling, and several neatly arranged dark wooden tables and chairs were placed under the lights. From the entrance, there is a tabletop arranged in a 7 shape, neatly filled with bowls and plates of food. At a glance, it is a dazzling sight. There are quite a few staff members in the cafeteria at this point. Lin Zhu is holding a tray to find a vacant seat, and the tabletop is mostly occupied by colorful dishes. Fried fish, mushroom sliced pork soup, braised rice. Meat dumplings. Lin Zhu started eating in a speechless storm with his messy hair on his head. The action is fast, but it is also polite. The extremely simple yet incredibly delicious food confirmed that Lin Zhu would never miss the time when the cafeteria was open. How could there be a free and so delicious cafeteria? Lin Zhu quickly understood, and Uncle Wan devoted all his conscience to the cafeteria. Great, starting tonight, she will be a supporter of the cafeteria. He is also the guardian of Uncle Wan's conscience. She put back the tableware and left with a handsome figure, but it left a vivid impression in the minds of many staff members that whose destitute little dog has been lost for a few days without eating. Auntie Zong. She's so handsome. She's so handsome. She's so handsome. I don't know if anyone understands the meme haha, P.S. The male lead here is not interested anymore. Qian Shu. She is quite good at keeping a distance. End of this chapter.